Hello and welcome to week 1 of Introduction to Spanish. This video we're just going to be going over adjectives. A quick note, adjective in English is a word that describes or modifies a noun in general. We're going to be working with those in Spanish and just looking at a few key rules because the way they use adjectives in Spanish is different than how they use it in English. So we'll talk about some of those rules, we'll see some examples, and then I'm going to read through the list, the same list that you're going to be seeing in your vocab builder disc that you will be listening to in the car, but that way you can also visually see some of those and what they look like, and then how they would get used. So as I mentioned in Spanish, there's a few key rules to using adjectives that's different than in English. The first one is 90% of the time, the order is backwards when they place adjectives and nouns. Now, a noun is a person, place, or thing. So anything, everything you see around you that kind of you can physically touch or there's a place to, that's considered a noun. When you want to describe a noun and specify, instead of just saying the computer, you want to specify it with the black computer or the white computer or the red computer or anything like that. When you want to describe, to specify, that's when adjectives come into play. Now in English, a prime example would be the White House. We're talking about a house, which is the noun. It's white, we're describing it, and we use the word the as an article to kind of specify. So when we say the White House in Spanish, you have to reverse the order of house and white. So in Spanish, instead of saying the White House, they'll say the house white, la Casa Blanca. I'm sure everybody has heard the phrase Casa Blanca from the famous movie, which I'll openly admit I've never seen. But la Casa Blanca is the White House, or the house white. Another example I'll give you, the girl pretty, la chica bonita. So in English you'd say, oh, that's the pretty girl. In Spanish you say the girl pretty, la chica bonita. The building tall, el edificio alto, which means the tall building. And the test easy, el examen fácil. So when you place adjectives in Spanish, your tendency is going to want to be to put that adjective first, but when you're thinking of things describing in Spanish, in English, and trying to translate it in your head, try to think reverse order. You can reverse the order on it sometimes, but once you've mastered Spanish, there's certain situations where you can do it to kind of change the meaning. But in general, try to flip-flop it. Second rule, and this is where stuff starts to get kind of messy. Not only do they switch the positions of them, but in Spanish, every single noun that exists has a gender. This is something that exists in the Romance languages. We don't have it in English, but everything, the computer, the table, the chair, the desk, the house, everything is either male or masculine or female, feminine. It has nothing to do with who uses it. It has nothing to do, you can't say, a flower is feminine in Spanish, but it has nothing to do with the fact that flowers are generally attributed with girls. It's just the way it is. The computer is feminine for no apparent reason. It's just the way it is. So when you have a noun, the noun's always what it is, the computer is always the computer, and you want to attach an adjective to it, you have to match up in certain situations that gender. When you have an adjective that ends in an O, and you'll see a list to the right side, there's quite a few of them that end in O. If what you're talking about is masculine, for example, el coche, which means the car. So I'm talking about the car and it's masculine, then I don't have to mess with the adjective. I just put it in there as I would normally, in reversing the order. And so let's pick one here. We'll say the strong car, el coche fuerte, the strong car, el coche fuerte. You don't have to mess with it. Another one, the last car, or we'll say the past car, el coche pasado, talking about like the last car that I owned, the past car that I owned. El coche pasado, so that means the car past, or last car that I had. You leave it alone. However, if what you're dealing with in the noun department is feminine, and we'll go back to casa because it's one that everybody knows, just to keep it simple while we're looking at the concept, then we need to change any adjectives that we attach to it if they end in an O to an A. So the example I gave you is blanco, which means white. So blanco means white. In its regular form, it's an adjective. The word casa means house, but casa is feminine. So instead of saying la casa blanco, you can't leave blanco alone, that adjective. You have to say la casa blanca and change it to an A. So is it the end of the world if you don't do this? No, absolutely not. Still completely understandable. I want you to be aware that it's there. I'd like to practice it as we go, but while you're learning Spanish, and this is one of the things I'm going to say this quite frequently, don't stress out about getting it out perfect. The important part is learning how to speak it, and even if it's really rough and it's really kind of coming out a little difficult to understand, you're speaking it, you're practicing, you're using it, you'll hear it, and then you'll start to have more interactions, and then you'll start to hear things more, and things will start to sound more common, and you'll get more engaged with it, and then you will start to really feel some of these pieces. Don't expect to just be able to work all this out in your brain right away. Just let it come, but you do need to be aware that that's there. The other piece that the third rule that we're going to look at is that not only do you have to match up gender, but you also have to match up plurality. So just keeping with the previous, and that's with any adjective, doesn't matter what it ends in. So we use the example of La Casa Blanca, the White House. If you had more than one and you wanted to say the White Houses, you would say Las Casas Blancas. You add an S. In other situations where it does not end in a vowel, then you're going to add an ES. So looking at some of the adjectives that we have on the list, pequeño would just be pequeños if you needed to pluralize it. However, joven, the third one down, which means young, you would say jóvenes and add an ES to it. Okay, so when you're pluralizing, you add an S or you add an ES, depending on if it ends in a vowel or a consonant. So I gave a few examples here down below. La computadora blanca, the white computer. El examen corto, the short exam. El último día, the last day. El hombre bajo, the short man. La casa sucia, the dirty house. El testigo tranquilo, the calm witness. El juez bonito, the pretty judge, if there is such a thing. Sorry. So those are just a few examples of how you would do to describe something when you want to describe it, and you add articles. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about articles, but you will notice we have an L or a la. So for your practice, you'll be working a little bit with that if you can. L is for something that's masculine. La is for something that's feminine. Los, L-O-S, would be for something masculine and plural. Las would be something plural and feminine. And all those words, el, los, la, las, all are just different ways of saying the. That's all they are. So we have a list of adjectives over here. Again, look over them if you want to listen to the CD, the portion. When you get to that portion about adjectives, you can. I'm just going to read down the list in Spanish just so you can kind of practice or at least hear them again with how they sound. Pequeño, grande, joven, mayor, bueno, correcto, equivocado, frío, caliente, cálido, tibio, bonito, largo, corto. And corto is generally used with short, like something that's vertically short, like a short pen or a short marker or a short piece of paper. Not so much vertically with like somebody's height. You wouldn't say somebody is corto for somebody's short. Use the word bajo. Fuerte, débil, claro, próximo, siguiente, último, pasado, cercano, bajo, alto, nuevo, viejo, fácil, difícil, duro, ligero, pesado, limpio, sucio, lleno, vacío, tranquilo. Okay, so that's a list of the adjectives. You'll hear them again. This way you can kind of see them as you look at them as you go through. Other than that, as I mentioned, there's a short activity that I'm asking you to do in combination with this, and it's finding a few things around you. You can pull out the sheet to do it, that you could describe. So not full sentences, but looking at items. Are you talking about an envelope? What do you see on a daily basis? Is it a white envelope that you use all the time because you do accounts receivable? Is it a window, maybe, and what type of window it is? So think of things around you that you can describe, and I want you to write those down in English and then translate them into Spanish. Now, I gave you some resources for looking up things. wordreference.com, SpanishDict.com. You can use Google Translator, just a regular dictionary if you have one. When you look up these words, especially in the nouns in the dictionary, if you need to figure out what it is, like I don't know how to say envelope, so you look it up, it'll have an F or an M next to it, and that indicates whether it's feminine or masculine. So just keep that in mind if you use an adjective. And I know it's a lot to think about, but it's just a few things. So start small. I'm thinking of 5, 7 things in my area that I can describe, and start from there, and then you can kind of work your way out. So don't focus on memorizing all of these adjectives. Focus on using a few of them that you're actually going to use, and then when you find another one that's maybe important, then maybe you write that down. You also have a little notebook that I gave you with your packet. That little notebook, it's about yay big. You want to make sure you're jotting down maybe some of these things in there. So when you're waiting for something for work, or you're at home just kind of sitting down between commercials, pull it out for a minute, 2 minutes. Just read through some of your stuff, put it away. Don't sit there and try to hammer and memorize everything. There's no test per se that you have to get an A on. It's just your own personal interest in learning Spanish. So that's when you've got that 2 minutes, just pull it out, look at it for 2 minutes, read it over, put it away. There's no pressure, there's no stress, you're not going to get tested on it. It's just you learning Spanish and exposing yourself to it. And that's going to make it much easier when you do get the opportunities to practice it. It's that preparation piece that's really going to help you. So that's it for this video, and we will see you next video.